So hi everyone and welcome to ChessUp 2 games. We are still hoping for the black pieces. Last 3 games were white. So let's see what's going to happen now. And we are playing finally with black pieces. We are playing against Croatian Pankier 1307, so now the games will be in 1300 range. We are playing Sicilian, and we are going to play the Khan Sicilian. There may have been couple of things on my chessboard. Maybe I need to give it a little wipe over. So white is playing c3, which looks like they would love to play the opening. They would like to play the opening. This is a Sicilian Alapin, so there are 2 main responses here with knight f6 and pawn to d5 against Alapin. However, what we are going to do is we are going to develop the same way as usual. The only difference that we probably going to apply is not to capture on d4 in this case. White would prefer to have a strong center. Yes, we are going to play exactly the same way. It might be really, really wrong to play the same way. But we are going to try nevertheless, just to confuse our opponent a little bit. So after d4 we are going to play a6. We're going to allow whites to do what they would like to do, but it's not going to be a typical Sicilian. Pawn to h3 is a very surprising move, because there's no reason to prevent us from jumping onto g4 with a knight or with a bishop. So we're definitely going to play the a6 move and the same setup as we would normally play. This time we don't gonna play knight c6 first, because that could get kicked by the pawn d5. So the idea would be first to develop the queen onto c7. Knight to a3 is also an interesting move, where the knight could potentially go to game through c4, but that would only give us the option to kick the knight with the pawn to b5. So we are going to simply keep on developing. We want the queen in the game on the same square. Unfortunately for us, there's not the tactic that we were planning after d4, cd4, cd4. At some point I wanted to have a knight on c6 and take here. If the queen takes, then I had queen c1, but with knight to a3, queen c1 is no longer possible. And white is still playing in the spirit of Alapin, where I would play normally d5 and the knight goes on to a3. However, h3 does not belong to the position, so I'm really confused about white choices, and I believe what they are doing here is a bit schematic to what you would normally do in these positions. So now if I would play knight f6, then white can push e5, and then also by taking this g4 square we would not be able to jump there. So the idea might be simply to push pawn to b5 and develop the bishop onto b7 first, just to attack this pawn on e4. We have seen this b5 move when we were playing white the other day against another Sicilian player. So bishop b7 only seems logical. Now the knight here doesn't seem to have any more squares. He might want to go through c2 and e3 into the game. But from e3 again doesn't have much scope, as we're covering all these squares with the pawns. And now the next idea is to play knight to c6, so then we can play knight to f6. First move we can also play is bishop to e7. So white is wasting lots of time. First they play d3 and now they playing d4. But this move already is a mistake because they are losing the pawn on e4, which in this case is a very important pawn for them. And once they lose the pawn on e4, there's also no longer push onto d5 with their own pawn, as this pawn was supporting the push of d5. So we're gonna simply take the pawn. Another problem for white might be if we get to play c4 ourselves, but we don't have that move, as white is taking on c5. And we can just simply recapture and develop the bishop. So right now it looks like the central bishops will be very strong. So now that the bishop trade is offered, we may accept it, but we may also reject it. It really depends on how we feel about this position, but I personally feel that maybe developing a knight on active square might be a good idea. But we also have a very strong move of bishop takes a3, and then we would be threatening queen to c3, winning 2 pawns. But right now what's important is just to develop our pieces into the game. I'm not sure if knight f6 is the best move for potential bishop g5. But we want to be developing at the moment, so That's a move we are going to play. And white decides to castle, which is fine for us because now we have enough time to play move d5. So we are fixing the c3 pawn, and the next idea is to play knight to d7, so there should be no more worry for our bishop on e4 or knight on f6 if bishop g5 is being played. There's also very big tactical problem for white if they were ever to play pawn to g3, as we have queen takes g3 check, and you cannot recapture back with the pawn. So that's one of the moves that would probably be scary for white, and as we have a free central pawn, we should be already close to winning, if not winning completely. Knight to g5 is definite possibility. So now one of the ideas is to play bishop to g6 and let white trade on g6. So when we recapture, we will have the open g file. However, it will be difficult to use that g file just yet. But there is a tactical possibility if once we get the g file. Got some hair here. So one of our moves would be to take on d3, but we would only be helping activating the queen. So in this case, we will prefer to play bishop onto g6. And I'm even contemplating to try and castle long if the g3 file opens, because that we will have a really strong attack. Queen to f3. That's a move that looks dangerous, but it appears to be dangerous only to white. If we can somehow plug this, these squares now, the knight is going to be in danger. White probably wants to play a move like bishop f4. And we are going to go for some tactics there. We can just as well play it simply. So right now deciding what happens if bishop d4 comes. Because now that white wasted time with move queen to f3, then maybe capturing on d3 doesn't sound so ridiculous. And if white plays bishop f4, if we allow it, so I feel we are going to capture on d3 first. So basically what happened just now was a couple of nothing moves for both sides. White is going to recapture, which makes sense. And I believe before we castle, we shall develop the knight onto d7. With the idea that if white wants to put the queen on f3 again, then we are trapping the knight for sure. Because queen f3 is the only escape square for the knight at the moment. And in this case, we are going to short castle. Knight goes into the game through c2, which makes lots of sense. We can play one interesting move probably, and that is to attack the queen over here. It's just to see where the queen is going to go. If bishop f4 comes, we can always take on d3 with an advantage. If nothing else, we will be threatening the pawn, whilst white will have to recapture our queen. So asking the queen where it's going to go, it's cannot be a waste of move for us. The queen may be placed here. But then it could potentially come under attack if we play bishop d6. So queen to g3 looks like a logical move, and that's something I should have explored. Queen to e2 also makes lots of sense. And I believe it's a time to ask this knight where it's gonna go. Our king is still in the middle, which is not ideal, but knight will of course go here, because there's no other square to go. Now, one of my ideas was to play knight to e4, but if bishop f4 comes, that forces a trade. And then my main idea is not going to be available to me. So I believe in the first instance we are going to move the knight onto like a more active square, from which we can go back to b6, to d6, and then eventually we are going to play knight to e4. I have played a couple of games today where against my sons. So white is obsessed with the idea of bishop f4, but probably you can find what. Why do I think it's a mistake? I'll just give you a few more moments. It's a quite simple mistake, because white doesn't have the piece protected. He's attacking our queen for sure, but I don't see any protection for the bishop or any follow-up after we take the bishop, so this might conclude our Sicilian game, number 4, I believe. And we can move onward to another game. Now, if the advantage was not clear to you until now, we were up a clear pawn, now we are up a clear piece. Now there isn't much that white can do to change the direction of this game. This bishop's very strong, the queen is strongly placed, our knights will be perfectly placed as well. I suspect white will try and trap our queen with move g3, but that will cost only 2 pawns. And we will be able to castle next. There's no need to rush with our own attack. Any endgame is supposed to be easily won for us. So the knight jumps to e5, which is reasonable. However, we can sort of counterattack that knight by placing our own knight forward. Now we are attacking the knight itself. It doesn't have any useful jumps, apart from perhaps knight to c6, but here the knight doesn't threaten anything. So here the knight actually starting to threaten something, which is our own queen. our queen, and it's hitting also the bishop. At the same time, the knight is well protecting here on d3. From d3, it's protecting the f2 pawn. So the one move that comes to mind is queen c7, just to protect the bishop once more. If we can help it, we don't want to give that bishop away. So apart from our rook, so our pieces are nicely placed. And with the two central pawns unopposed, it's going to be very difficult for white to even stir any counterplay. I don't see any possible moves that would change anything. If white is forced to trade this bishop for the knight, that only helps us, as we are already up a bishop and a pawn. Needless to say, white is spending lots of their time thinking for their moves. So that's a positive on their side. But there is not much they can do to change the course of the game. And white probably resigned the game, or resign on the game itself. I don't expect them to play any more moves, as the time is just ticking, and I would expect them to at least take on c5. But I believe next 5 minutes we are going to be just waiting for them to lose on time. It's not the first time this happened to us. And sadly, it's probably not the last time either. Also, white is still trying to stir something, little something here. So I have been proven wrong once again, which is on the positive side. So what I would like to do is to protect my bishop where possible. So right now I value this bishop a lot more than the knight on d3, and that's the reason why I'm going to play bishop b6. I would much rather play bishop a7, but I don't want to give this pawn, even though it's not a big deal if I return that pawn. I might as well not to care about the bishop at all and just simply castle. We have enough material to worry about move like knight g3 that wins us another 5 points for 3 points, so the exchange. So knight g3 here is totally possible, hitting both the rook and the queen. The pawn cannot recapture because of the pin, and if white takes here, we take back queen with a check. But I believe it's just a simple matter of castling. This pawn is very soft, so white is trying to protect the pawn. However, there isn't much they can do against knight to g3. Now that we castled, I believe it's a good time to get more of a material for us. And the sad thing as well is for white that we will be replacing the knight for the knight g3 with the knight e4. So far it's like very simple basic tactics that come out of the position because we are having the strategic advantage. And as I was saying, I was playing today with my sons on ChessUp 2, and with my wife and also with my daughter, and none of them have been able to beat me even with the advanced level, and quite strangely not even on the master level. On master level they have lost really quickly a pawn, so even with 3 advices it didn't seem to give them that much help. So white resigns the game, and we are going to move on to another game which will be broadcasted tomorrow. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I know it was rather short in terms of excitement, but I'm sure that on our journey we are going to get some more exciting games. So far we have both the c5 and the Phillidor. They are both neck and neck, whilst on the white side of pieces the Vienna attack is doing much better against the Vienna system is doing much better against the Botvinnik. As the Botvinnik we have managed to lose 1/2 a point. So I hope you enjoyed this game. I will see you in another one.